All right, good evening, everybody. Back, System Shock here, back with the 14th episode of Cultist Simulator, The Bright Young Thing, playing as David Ellison. And for this week, I'll just be reminding everyone that I did have a bit of computer drama, and so if there were audio problems either in the previous episode or this episode, please let me know. Comments are best way, but really you can reach me Twitter, direct messages I can usually see in most cases. Just let me know if things are not working out. I may not be able to change the videos this week because I record a week's videos in advance, but it's helpful for me to be able to correct these things, and in the worst case scenario, I'll mark up the videos that are affected and correct the problem as best as I can. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about this stuff. So we've been translating a few of our works. We've got the Orchid Transfigurations translated. We wanted to deal with De Bellis Murorum as well, because these are things that are likely going to be works that help me out with my commissions. We finished that, and we'll be reading those books shortly. We don't have any secret histories to work with, so I would usually in this case use the explore verb for oriflammes, but the Bronzepintra is actually something that we'll use for mirror repair later, so I'm going to hang on to one of these unless we get particularly desperate. So Explore is going to be left alone for a little while. We will go back to the White Door, and I have been doing some paintings. Again, at some point I do need to end the investigation, but we're still probably a ways off in terms of picking up more followers, although certainly I could get more followers if I was willing to use the rumors. So I may change my stance on that, but I'm going to keep the status quo. The last thing that happened that I haven't worked on because I was talking about principles too much yesterday, or not yesterday, Monday, is this subtle fracture. So I'm going to use that in a sunset right. I probably am not going to have too much that I can work with on this. But if I could get a percussagant, particularly for the Hebe Stanton, that would be nice. And of course, having summons generally is nice for expeditions, but I'm not going to make them as much of a requirement as I normally do. And there's mechanical reasons as well as character reasons why I might find that useful. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself. We're still waiting on the usual activities. So we'll head through the White Door. Now I approach the White Door through the bounds. Now I can press my fingers to it, feel its chill, watch it swing open. As it opens, my mouth closes, tightens, heals over like a lost deformity. Around and about me is the cobalt light of the mantis. I could spend money on better paints, or perhaps I could find more exotic pigments. Honestly, I'm only going through the motions. The quality of my work will no doubt suffer. There's nothing to be ashamed of here. And we've now translated De Bellis Murorum, an 18th century epic poem by the pseudonymous Solipstos. So we're going to read the three formerly Latin texts. Well, they're still in Latin, but we obviously have translations. We'll read the three translated texts, and then we'll worry about Deoris and the remaining works afterwards. Again, Moth, I'm pretty good as far as the lore is concerned, so translating Deoris is not as high as a priority as these other three. The illustrations are certainly striking. They flush the skin and glow beneath the eyelids after the book is closed. And just if we have not, it has been a couple of days, in real time it's been a couple of days. So the first volume of a compilation of quasi-Rosicrucian allegories, supposedly by Robert Flood. This is a later English translation. Okay, Season of Ardors helps me out with contentment. We do have a Season of Despair coming up, so I want to keep an eye out for any potential consequences for that. But I'm not... again, I'm not doing too many activities that should generate dread. Looks like we did get a high amount of staleness off of that, so my recent work is considered notable. I've exhibited the latest paintings publicly. Surely someone will buy something. So I'm going to wait out the passion. Unfortunately, we don't have that much that we can do with the work slot right now, but that may change once I get the heart back. So I'm just going to hang on all these. I've always wondered if painting with the same item increases the staleness at a higher rate. I really don't know, but it feels like it should be something that does that. I'm going to be a little bit of a little silly and preserve the influence a bit longer. This is just so I can have the heart to work with it. Again, I may not wind up using all of this, but it's nice to have the option. Actually, the other problem is I haven't really brought that many people into the cult. So, for instance, I don't think I have an edge follower, and that's going to be a problem. So yeah, actually, this is where I wind up paying for my laziness on this. Because if I try and bring in Dorothy, she doesn't have enough heart. So in this case, I would want to be bringing in the higher level heart. But because I don't have any edge followers, I suspect this is going to mean that I'm still stuck without the ability to summon a percussagant. So I might try and do something about that. Here's what I'm going to do. There may be consequences for this, but you never know. This might be a living. So I'm going to use the subtle fracture as an inspiration. Now, it says here a mood piece, so sometimes there at least used to be paintings that would generate you notoriety that weren't just like the ones that become instruments for you. So it doesn't seem to be the case for the knock, but again, I could be wrong on that. Fascination's not fun. Last night, in the billowing blue of the lodge of the Sage Knight, I sat on velvet cushions and watched two dead contend with shining swords. They came with the place, said the woman who rules here now, the one who calls herself Gallagher. I was not the Sage Knight, if that's what you're wondering. He went higher in the Mansis long before I came here. My attention has drifted. The swords sparkle like falling water. The dead move like dancers. So I could clear out the fascination. I don't think we have a season of visions coming up, though, so maybe we roll the dice and see if we can get something from the white door instead. Where was I going? Right, so we've already got what we need from the for the mood piece. Can have a chat with Dr. Adim. Okay, there's Violet. So first thing I'm going to do here, we will add Violet. I should probably read the people who are recently added. So Sylvia lost her eye in the woods when she was 9 years old. Every year at Candlemas, she returns to the place she buried it. And here we have Violet. Violet has always given unstintingly of her time, easing the pain of the dying. Okay, so I do want to, as I was saying, we're feeling the pinch as far as the ranks are concerned, so I am going to bring an edge follower in. Here we've got Victor. Victor is a sly fellow, and he knows an unusual opportunity when he sees it. So here we'll take the Mirror of Glory. This is a slightly more effective way for me to get rid of fascination, by the way. This doesn't require me to tie up the dream slot. This one is ready. I couldn't do the fascination on its own because while it seems like it's something that should be lantern, it is in fact moth. I think one of the reasons why... so yellow is... There's, I think, two reasons why, and this could just be for me, but whenever I get caught assuming that fascination is associated with lantern, I think it's because, one, it's a big yellow card, so normally you associate yellow with lantern. Although not exclusively, right? Poppy is not... Poppy may be very well aligned with a particular aspect, but it's certainly not lantern. Funds are not associated with lantern. Sanskrit does not necessarily, associate with lantern. Dorothy doesn't. So again, yellow does not necessarily mean lantern in all cases, but it is fair to say more often than not you see the association with lantern. And more importantly, when you have lantern influence and it decays, it turns into fascination. And so you would maybe think of you'd think of an association there, particularly because moth turns into restlessness, and restlessness eventually turns into dread. So, it's at least for me, it's one that I actually need to exercise some conscious thought to get out of sort of the mental groove that I've worked myself into. But like I said, it could just be that I should have talked with Dr. Adim about a commission before I did. It's 30 seconds, but there was really no rush for that. 5 seconds would not have been a long time to wait. But yeah, anyways, it's one that I still kind of catch myself with every now and again. And you all need to suffer for it. on on broadcasts. So again, passion painting here. We need to get rid of 2 staleness, so we may need to do another one of these. We must devour to be devoured. We cannot be undevoured, as we cannot be unborn. So that's another red secret. 3 of those now. I've got an extra glimmering for trouble. Let's go to the next one. More or less the same text here. The second volume of a compilation of quasi-Rosicrucian allegories, supposedly by Robert Flood. This is a later English translation. Flood, or pseudo-Flood, suggests alignments between the alchemical tradition of Rubidoux and the older Grail traditions, through the Pine Knight's quest for the Cinnabar Cup. Up next, another Season of Despair. Now, we did get hit by the Season of Visions twice, but I'm not too worried about a repeat from that. And of course, the likelihood of me getting hit by a dread is quite low. A dozen lights blaze. There is no place for shadow in these rites, and no place for mercy. Victor, a believer. Victor is a sly fellow, but loyal. So here, again, it's a bit of a flyer to see whether or not I can get the percussagant, but at least in this case here, I can combine a Waking Chant, the knock influence, and one of my followers to. I can give it a try where previously I couldn't even experiment with Victor. I've created something both distinctive and beautiful. It will very likely enhance my reputation. Not necessarily what I'm looking for, but okay. So 2 funds for that. We're still up a staleness, and we got a fascination for our trouble as well. Okay, so there are some things that I would maybe want to do with the work slot. Nah, you know what? I was just going to say, it's like we could try and preserve the Subtle Rupture again, but there's no point in doing that. So we'll go for the Subtle Rupture. We'll bring in Victor. Is the Waking Chant sufficient? Yes, it is. So, summon the creature of the Thunderskin. The percussagant, merciless and merry, heart will bring it, edge will constrain it. So one of the things I can do to try and preserve the percussagant is just to keep using the Explore verb. No luck in the Lodge of the Sage Knight. In last night's dream, I was in the Lodge of the Sage Knight, behind the White Door. It's difficult to remember exactly how I came there, and the mistress of this place, the woman with the dark glasses, was nodding as if I had asked her a difficult question. Of course I hadn't. I lost my speech when I passed the White Door. How is it that I can speak, she said to me. I didn't come here through the White Door. I'm not proud of what I did to come here, so let me tell you about something else. Again, we keep going for the White Door just because it does have the items that I need, and I don't have the riddle that I need yet. But yeah, the Explore verb is going to be something that I can use to preserve the percussagant if I need. But the percussagant is probably the most useful of the summons that I can bring in right now. It doesn't solve everything, but it solves a lot that I'm going to be running up against for at least some of the bigger challenges that I'll run up against in my upcoming expeditions. I don't quite have the same feeling of pacifism that I do for some of the other cults that I run. But with that in mind, it's still like the percussagant is kind of nice because if you do need to use force, the options on the table. But I do tend to find for things like just because that you have to cross a number of bodies of water, it doesn't actually hurt to have a fairly decent amount of heart in reserve. The only thing that would be better, and it makes no sense to allow the percussagant to do this, the only thing that would make the percussagant better is if they could do the same kinds of things that heart followers could, i.e. Remove reputation. And clearly it's silly to have a percussagant running around the city cleaning up my reputation. So it's completely understandable why it doesn't do that. But that would be the only thing that I think would make the percussagant even more useful than it is. Also, it might just be because I really like reading the percussagant descriptions. Seek the cup in the birthing bed, the Pine Knight is told. The midwife at the birthing bed, to his amazement, is the Mountain Mother. In a fit of awe, he both gelds and flays himself. The vigilant storm bursts joyfully from the remains. And here we have a Megalesian incantation. It's very substantial, so in this case I don't believe this is enough, but We have the Great Mother Remembers. Now, if I wanted, I could try and double up the Red Secret to be able to move the Megalesian incantation further, but that's, again, after I read all of my other books. It's likely that's going to happen, though, because I have, there is stuff for me to do, but there isn't, I'm just thinking about how long it's going to take me to actually do the expeditions, and I have a feeling that I'm going to run out of books before I start doing expeditions. On to De Bellis Murorum, the 18th century epic poem by the pseudonymous Slipstos. The poem elliptically describes a war between beasts, weather phenomena, and arcane concepts. It's quite specific about their tactics. Okay, we got hit again by the Season of Despair, so maybe the patches have changed this to be a more regular occurrence. So Season of Suspicion's not a worry, because we've been living under that our entire run. First the thump, the rattle and cry of the ceremonies it attends in the wood. Now here it is, shouldering its way through the world's skin, like a clawed and ruthless uncle or a headless flapping bear. The percussagant, it loves the sistrum's shiver, it loves the thrum of the tympanos, it recalls with fondness the flaying of Marsyas, and so it will not stop dancing. I could use the subtle flaw to try and summon some other things, but I don't see quite the same need. Percussagant, again, I've got uses for it, but in this case here, we'll just search the city and we'll keep this thing around for a very long time. Crowded thoroughfares by day, a fog-wrapped labyrinth by night. I'll send my minions to searching for opportunities. We will... well... let's paint the subtle flaw again. If we get a chance to reuse it, why not, right? Should have an impact. Again, we won't pay for the paints on this, but I'm fairly certain... oh, okay. Last night in the great pavilion above the grey sprawl of the brown... once again. Last night, in the great pavilion above the grey sprawl of the bounds, a woman who once called herself Teresa Gallagher sat on gilt-fringed cushions and offered me a horn cup of dream wine. The wine is imaginary, she explained, but the cup is not. To navigate the Mansis, one must understand the distinction. Perhaps one day you'll join me on the pilgrimage, or I'll join you. So here, let us share a secret. And her breath tickled my ear. So I could switch out the two knock influences, but I don't know, it's not that big of a deal for me. Excuse me. An overlooked place I might have found somewhere unusual. So if I wanted knock influence, Street Strange by Moonlight is actually not a bad place to go. I do tend to find that there are sometimes there's consequences for going there that I don't really want to live with, so I don't use it as often as I should, but it is an option available to me. I am curious though where my percussagant just went. There we go. One thing that's nice about spamming the percussagant like this is that there's no negative effect. So it's not Moth where you have to worry about old and happy far off things. You do have the chance though of generating a Course of the Heart. So entry consultants are not bad, by the way, but I think I'm gonna... actually, the entry consultant would be useful in the Hebe Stanton. So maybe I will... No, I can't because of the notoriety, so I was tempted to hire them, but I'm going to leave it. The two one joined and the horde distinguished, consequently, blood. And here we've got Chiliarch's lesson. This is the bone-deep story of the thousandmen learnt in antiquity, of blood and its exits. To speak it aloud is to hear the sword hiss. So, this gives me a level 4 edgelore, and this will mean that I can fulfill Count Janning's substantial edge commission. The Count will pay for information of interest. This time, he'd like substantial notes on the practices of the edge. Okay. Let's go... Right, so now we're back to translating. So, De Oris in Latin, a 19th century reprint by the indefatigable Nathaniel Darcy Evers of a 14th century Latin translation of a 4th century work. Lock the study door, the work begins. Okay, we got a hanger-on, which is not always the most exciting item, but more members of the cult is always a good thing. We are, however, going to... So, because of the problem that I ran into before, like needing to turn Victor into a higher level believer, there is that side of me that says, well, maybe I should start bringing a few more people in. I'm not going to, but it is something that I kind of keep in the back of my head as I'm doing this. I think I still want to swell the ranks before I... Actually, there is one thing I want to check. Okay, Season of Sickness. So if it was a Season of Visions, then I would have gotten rid of it. But in this case, we're going to do a Waking Chant. There's the chance that we get the Course of the Heart. But yeah, in this case here, again, I'm probably just going to fill out the ranks before I sort of spam people into the inductions. Although, like a bonehead, I did not get a commission from Dr. Adim again. We are going to be able to waste a bit of time, though, by doing Count Janning's commission. Okay, so that's all the overexposure dealt with. A lot of Mystique, so if I'm expecting the investigation to finish anytime soon, I am going to be sorely disappointed. This may be useful for a commission. But yeah, this is pure mistakes on my part that I haven't gotten another commission from Dr. Adim. There's going to be a little bit of a penalty for that, but nothing we can't get by. By the way, you can probably hear my chair squeaking all over the place. I do apologize for that. Last night, I dreamt of the blue silk pavilion overlooking the cloudy labyrinth of the Bounds. I listened to the mistress of this place speak of other visitors. The Suppression Bureau come here. Did you know that? I think they hope to recruit me as an ally. She snorts derisively. After what they tried to do to Christopher. But their folly is your fortune. I'll tell you something that may help you if the Bureau ever troubles you. This is always a nice one to get, but I tend to find the circumstances under which I need it. Like, what I tend to do is I tend to seek this out, and I've never really gotten the benefit from a favor of... Like, these ones that I just get through naturally doing activities, I almost never actually wind up using them. But I have found them useful enough that when I do get in trouble, I do seek them out as a contingency. As I've said a few times, the fact of the matter is it is always a probabilistic, a get-out-of-jail-free card. So it's entirely possible that something winds up going to trial and there's still a conviction because the favor doesn't work out. But it's better than nothing, right? Like, if you're at the point where the favor from authority needs to be used, anything helps at that point. If you don't have the favor from authority, there's only one thing that's going to happen to the person. But with that in mind, right, if there's an investigation going on and you have a favor from authority, you don't necessarily just want to lean on that. You want to try and find another way of dealing with the evidence. Although it is a little bit easier to get followers now, or replacement followers. Anyways, we're going to search the city. We did get the thing we wanted from the Percussagant, which is the Course of the Heart, so we will be using the dream slot to heal up in about a minute. And we get a free turn. I prepared the text for study. So we will read De Oris. This is the last work that'll get me new lore. I'll get the last two languages, and then I'll start moving up. Probably start with the Grail, then we'll move on to Lantern and Forge. Well, actually, probably Forge might make a little more sense. No, Lantern makes more sense because it will be something I can use for leveling people up. An occasionally coherent catalogue of the secret gods. This is an English translation of a volume dealing with the powers of the wood. This volume deals mostly with the hours of the wood, the moth, the black flax, the ringyew, among others. And we have a chance to hire a hulking fellow. Under normal circumstances, I would hire and betray this individual so that I can get food for the spider door. But we're definitely a long way off from doing that, and we really probably shouldn't be generating notoriety here, so just going to leave it be. Okay, we can turn that on in with Jennings when the time comes. We don't have any staleness, so if I want to do some painting, now would be the time. This should have an impact. And my own heart pumps more strongly today. I recall my dream. This was the Lodge of Blue Silk flapping in the winds of the bounds at the Mansus edge, and here was its mistress, who welcomed me as she welcomes all travelers. Company is nice, she confided, but I still miss my Christopher. 10 years. 10 years and not enough. But we could not have been long together, not without touching each other, and you know what occurs when a man long lies with a long woman. Or perhaps you don't. I hope you don't. I won't tell you just in case. I'll give you a tiny gift. One thing I always found kind of neat, so I think what they're specifically referring to here is the crime of the sky. And one thing I always thought was really interesting was the way that they communicate what it is, or don't communicate what it is really, but there's a couple of things that you can imagine it is. Maybe the obvious, quote-unquote obvious, like the first impressions that you get are, or at least for me, are the incorrect ones. But what I find so interesting about it is how I need to sit down and think about the specific texts that point me to what I think it is now. There is actually enough where if you look in it, like if you're specifically focusing on that part of the world, and if you're specifically focusing on what that means, there's actually enough. It's almost kind of like the game is either aware, like the game may just kind of be putting you on a particular train of thought, and it knows that it's done that, and so then it also later says, actually, this isn't quite it. You're on the right track, but it's a little different. Or it could just be, a recognition that this is going to be people's first impressions or whatever. There's a few different ways that you can sort of account for it in terms of the intention behind the writing. But one thing I did kind of like, and it's probably not the first time it happened, but it's the one that always kind of it's the one that I always have in mind when I think about how the game does a really good job of having I think a fairly good idea of what's going on in my head at a particular time, and how it provides just enough of a nudge if I'm paying attention to the right thing to move on. Again, it's one of the things that I think makes this game interesting for more than just an exercise in world building. And for those of you who are fans of the one of the co-founders of Weather Factory, Alexis Kennedy, you'll know that one of the books that he's written is called Against World Building and Other Provocations, and the idea of world building certainly has kind of a special meaning in terms of conversations kind of surrounding games like this. But with that in mind, right, like it is also fair to say that it's a term that exists. People talk about world building. People talk about how interesting the world of the Secret Histories is, and how that is something that's attractive to them. And so it's silly to pretend that that isn't something that's used to describe it. But where I think Cultist Simulator sort of punches above its weight, maybe, is that it's not just a very interesting setting. So there's certainly lots of neat ideas here, the principles, the hours, particularly the Secret Histories themselves, just the different sort of pivot points, and how certain individuals, both have radically different, there's sort of radical changes between what happens in the world, between the different histories, but also just how certain things always seem to be there. Some of them will have differences, and other times it will be things that almost seem to be these constants. So like I think there's the reference to Vienna is always present. So all of that stuff's really interesting, in addition to just sort of the things that seem to be just sort of completely made up. But where I think Cultist Simulator is more interesting than just an exercise in world building, again, acknowledging the fact that, I'm inevitably going to open myself up to a lot of all capital letters messages using the term world building in this kind of company. I think the thing that really makes this game sort of punch above its weight, and I think one of the things that's more interesting to me, is not necessarily just this other world that it's made, as interesting as it is, but the fact that it seems to be quite aware of where my mind is sort of wandering in these spaces, and how it's always just going to give me enough of a tug to go into an interesting place. And if I'm not paying attention, I might even miss it. So I don't think there's a lot of times where Cultist Simulator has really grabbed me by the shoulders and said, you gotta look at this. And I actually think this is where I had a very unhappy Cultist Simulator player let me know what they thought of the game in the beginner's guide thing that I made, which I always find interesting because it's not like I have any way of altering the game, but I think some people just want to vent. But I actually think this may be the way, some people who bounce off of Cultist Simulator, I actually think it's the fact that there isn't that effort to specifically, drag them around. But rather than just sort of give me sort of a thread to pull on, I do actually like the fact that if you are sensitive enough to what's going on inside of the writing, the game actually does do a very good job of just sort of nudging you into interesting places, and you can very safely ignore it and find the game interesting in its own right. But one of the things that's definitely sustained a few years of broadcasts, as nice as it is to have a very supportive community of people who are interested in this game, and again, who will either leave nice comments or likes, or, just like metrics-wise, it's all nice, right? And I realize this is a thing that gets some people to do YouTube videos. But there's just a lot to dig into here. And if you happen to like this kind of writing, if you like thinking in an abstract way about games, it is really neat to just sort of pick up on what's going on inside of your head and how the game actually seems to have a certain degree of awareness about how it sort of guided you. And it's something that I never really got to appreciate when I first started playing the game. It's really something that I've kind of grown to appreciate as I play it more and more, and I sort of read and reread texts many times over. But it's something that, again, it's something I'm excited by. It's actually one of the reasons I'm also very excited about trying Book of Hours when it finally comes, because it's a chance to look at this setting with sort of fresh eyes. There's the previous exposure to Cultist Simulator. That's obviously not something I can't take the Men in Black memory ray and erase my experience of Cultist, nor would I want to. But I think a chance to sort of be exposed to something brand new and to have a different perspective on a setting that, I'm beginning to appreciate some of the subtleties that maybe weren't there before. It is kind of exciting to have this idea of being able to see whether or not I recognize more the first time I play Book of Hours, or if Book of Hours, after what I hope will be many hundreds of hours of playing that as well, winds up sort of revealing some fun little secrets as the time goes by. Anyways, we're going to heal up. Again, we got that vitality off of the course of the heart. We're going to send the Percussagant out to search the city. Crowded thoroughfares by day, a fog-wrapped labyrinth by night. I'll set my minions to searching for opportunities. And I think on that note, we need to wrap up for the night. So thank you very much for watching. I know I've been a little bit chattier over the last couple of episodes, but part of that is just me. This is the way I sort of vent after a couple of long days. But it is also nice to just have a chance to talk about some of the things that I don't always get a chance to talk about for Cultist Simulator. So thank you for watching as always. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow for another episode.